Tartarus. Located deep in the bowels of hell, filled with the souls of the damned, it was the prison of fallen gods, exiled heroes, and great criminals. But before becoming a place, Tartarus was a god, a primordial deity born of chaos. At his birth, Gaia, the earth, threw Tartarus into the depths of her entrails, transforming him into an inaccessible region from which no soul could return. The domain was ruled over by Hades, Lord of Hell. Held captive in Tartarus were all those struck by the wrath of Zeus. Around the prisoners stood a triple wall of bronze. There was no way out. All hope was lost. So deep was Tartarus that it would take a falling anvil 9 days to reach it from Earth. From deep within the shroud of sulfur rose the screams of the damned. Here were the sons of Uranus and Gaia, the Titans, punished for defying Zeus. Nearby were the giants. Believing that their monstrous size made them invincible, they dared to declare war on the master of Olympus, and they lost. But the Titans and the giants were not alone languishing in the notorious prison of Tartarus. Men, too, could be found there, legendary figures whose arrogance led them to believe themselves more powerful than the gods. The most famous of them was Sisyphus. Sisyphus was the son of the god Aeolus, master and ruler of the winds. He was married to one of the 7 Pleiades, Merope, and hailed from a long line of cunning individuals who constantly found new ways to deceive their fellow men and even the gods. As founder of Corinth, Sisyphus managed to develop a trade and navigation in his city. But in spite of that, or perhaps as a result of the ensuing turmoil, his subjects considered him to be an unreliable leader. Among his many treasures, Sisyphus boasted a magnificent herd of animals, one that was easily a match for that of his neighbor Autolycus, son of the god Hermes. Autolycus was a past master in the art of theft. His father gave him the power to completely transform any animal he stole, to give horns to those that had none, and to turn white creatures black and black creatures white. In time, Sisyphus began to notice a strange phenomenon. His herd was shrinking, while Autolycus's was growing ever larger. He knew all about Autolycus. He had to be the one behind this. So Sisyphus devised a ruse to catch the thief. One night, Autolycus helped himself to another 10 animals. Unbeknownst to him, he had fallen into Sisyphus's trap. At daybreak, Sisyphus went to Autolycus and accused him of theft. Autolycus protested vehemently. Sisyphus ordered his men to inspect Autolycus's herd. They easily identified the missing livestock, for carved into the side of each hoof were the words, stolen by Autolycus. This was the day before the wedding of Autolycus's daughter Anticlea. She was to marry Laertes, king of Ithaca. Sisyphus saw a way to exact his revenge. Leaving his men to punish the thief, he burst into the home of poor Anticlea and raped her. Sometime later, a child was born. He was given the name Ulysses. But was he the son of Laertes or Sisyphus? Ulysses eventually proved himself to be every bit as shrewd as Sisyphus, overcoming the 1,000 obstacles strewn in his path during his Odyssey. But a further incident condemned Sisyphus to eternal damnation. Zeus was a seducer. Whether goddess or mortal, any female entity that crossed his path would eventually succumb to his ardor. When he met Aegina, beautiful daughter of the river god Asopos, he had to have her. Taking on the appearance of an eagle, Zeus abducted Aegina and went off to hide on a lost island in the Aegean Sea. Asopos scoured all of Greece in search of his daughter. Just as Asopos was resigning himself to defeat, Sisyphus called out from the tower above his citadel. The edifice had been specially constructed so that he could observe the arrival of travelers before intercepting and robbing them. From his promontory, Sisyphus had witnessed Zeus's ploy. He thus proposed a deal with the tearful father, a water source in exchange for the name of the abductor. An eternal spring would allow Sisyphus to irrigate the arid lands around Corinth. Asopos accepted and immediately brought forth water to flow from a spring. Sisyphus then proclaimed to all and sundry that Zeus was to blame. None of these events had escaped Zeus. First, the rape of Anticlea, and now this denunciation. It was an act of impiety that could not be tolerated. He thus sent Sisyphus the most dreaded of visitors, Thanatos, the demon personification of death. But crafty Sisyphus, the smooth talker, managed to hoodwink death, putting forward a series of fallacious arguments. He even managed to send him in chains to one of the deepest prison cells in his citadel. Little by little, hell became more sparsely populated as Death, now a prisoner, failed to reap his daily quota of victims. A terrible tragedy loomed. Unless something was done, the earth would overflow with humanity, with no room for the burgeoning population. Something had to be done, and fast. Zeus was merciless. He condemned Sisyphus to the depths of Tartarus. But shrewd Sisyphus had another trick up his sleeve. Before obeying Zeus and descending into hell, he told his wife, Merope, to neither bury his body nor make any ritual offerings. While taken aback, Merope agreed. Once in hell, the convicted prisoner went to Persephone, the queen of the underworld. Feigning distress, he declared that having died without burial, he should not be there. He should have been left on the other bank of the Styx. He tearfully added that his wife had shown unforgivable impiety, and that while he accepted Zeus's punishment, he requested permission to return to Earth to make arrangements for his funeral and to punish the woman who had failed in her duties. He vowed to return as soon as the rituals had been fulfilled. Persephone gave her consent, provided that Sisyphus promised to return within 3 days. Sisyphus went back up towards the light, and naturally, he broke his promise. This time, an exasperated Zeus struck down Sisyphus. Without further ado, he dispatched him to the depths of Tartarus. And he devised a very special punishment for him. Sisyphus would be compelled to roll a huge rock up to the summit of a hill. The task didn't seem such a daunting one. However, he would have to keep repeating it ad infinitum. This absurd task seized the popular imagination, so much so that Sisyphus's punishment came to symbolize the human condition. In Tartarus, leaning on his rock, Sisyphus could find solace in the knowledge that he was not alone. On his arrival, he encountered many familiar figures. Not only Atlas, compelled to carry the world on his shoulders, but also Enceladus and Ixion, as well as many others whose names he had forgotten. Then, one day, a new prisoner appeared. He was taken to a spot not far from there, on the other side of the hill, up to a lake. Sisyphus knew the man to be Tantalus, king of Phrygia. Tantalus was the son of Zeus and the nymph Pluto. He married the daughter of the god Pactolus. Pactolus was both a god and a river, one filled with gold pieces ever since the day King Midas had swum there. Tantalus had everything to become a valiant hero: intelligence, courage, and especially the protection of his father Zeus. He was even accorded the rare privilege of joining in the feasts on Mount Olympus. Zeus named him king of Phrygia, and he became drunk on power. First, Tantalus betrayed the hospitality of the gods. One day, after eating and drinking at their table, while no one was looking, he dared to steal something that was the sole preserve of the gods. nectar and ambrosia, the food and drink of the immortals. Then back on Earth, he allowed mortal men to partake of them. As if this act were not sacrilegious enough, worse was to come. He invited the 12 gods of Olympus to a banquet in his palace. But while his guests were settling in, Tantalus realized that he did not have enough food for them. Instead of confessing the truth, he chose to deceive the gods, and he did so in the worst possible way. Summoning his son Pelops, he drew him into the palace kitchens, where, out of sight, he strangled him. He then cut up his son's flesh into pieces, before mixing it into the food being prepared for the gods. As soon as the gods tasted the dish, they recoiled in horror. All recognized the presence of human flesh. All except the goddess Demeter. Distracted by the recent death of her daughter Persephone, she unthinkingly ate a piece of Pelops' shoulder. Zeus, torn between revulsion and anger, gave orders for Tantalus to be thrown into hell. But even that did not seem enough. The following day, he decided that the murderer and blasphemer should be taken to the banks of a lake in the depths of Tartarus. Here then is Tantalus, king and deposed demigod, condemned to neither eat nor drink for eternity. To his right is the fruit hanging from a tree on the riverbank. It's a beautiful, shining, juicy pear. Around him, up to his neck, is cool, clear water. But whenever he leans forward to drink it, the water drains away, leaving only a black sludge. And if he tries to grab the pear, a sudden gust of wind moves it out of reach. From Olympus, Zeus observed his son. A son who was unworthy of being a god, unworthy of being a king, unworthy even of being a man. To dissuade anyone else from committing such an outrage, the suffering of Tantalus, forever starved and thirsty, would serve as an example. While Zeus was merciless in his punishments, he was also capable of great magnanimity. Deciding to resuscitate the hapless Pelops, he gave Hermes the task of collecting together the cut-up pieces of the child's body and placing them in a magic cauldron. In this way, every piece of the shredded body of Pelops was brought back to life. The king of the gods then summoned Clotho, one of the 3 fates, the goddesses who span and cut the fragile threads of existence. Zeus gave her the assignment of reconstructing the body of the young man. Clotho had almost finished her work when she realized that a part of the body was missing. The shoulder, inadvertently eaten by Demeter. So the goddess made a shoulder from ivory and imbued it with life. From that day on, all descendants of Pelops were born with a white mark on their shoulder. A short distance away, another criminal was serving penance. His name was Ixion. For Ixion, everything began when he wanted to marry the daughter of Deionius, king of Thessaly. To win her over, Ixion promised to give the young woman the most marvelous gifts. Deionius accepted his proposal and the wedding was celebrated. The following day, Deionius claimed the gifts promised to his daughter. There would be none, retorted Ixion, indicating with disdain that he had changed his mind. A quarrel broke out between the two men. Deionius threatened Ixion with the worst kind of retaliation. A frightened Ixion quickly invited his father-in-law to a feast of reconciliation. Deionius accepted. He duly entered Ixion's palace. Ixion welcomed him, then led him into a room where a table was laid for the feast. But as they passed a bed of burning wood and coals, Ixion brutally shoved his father-in-law, sending Deionius crashing into the burning embers. On learning of this odious crime, none of the deities on Mount Olympus were prepared to cleanse Ixion of his guilt. None, that is, but Zeus. Not only did he take pity on the criminal, he cleansed him and invited him to eat at his table. One would imagine that Ixion would show his gratitude to Zeus for this noble gesture. On the contrary, barely settled at the table, he behaved in the most ungrateful way imaginable, as he grew lustful for Hera, the wife of Zeus. This time, Ixion had gone too far. Making a cloud in the shape of Hera, Zeus thrust it into the arms of Ixion. In his desire and drunkenness, Ixion failed to realize that he was embracing an illusion, a double of Hera. Covering it with caresses and kisses, he forcibly took the object of his desires. From this union came to be born a hybrid being, half man, half horse. It would be called Centaur. While Ixion was convinced that he had won the heart of the Queen of Olympus, Zeus soon put an end to his frolics. Seizing Ixion, he threw him into the depths of hell, where he was tied to a flaming wheel, a wheel that would spin eternally until the end of time. And it turns still. The damned of Tartarus, whether Sisyphus, Ixion, or Tantalus, did not believe that the gods would dare punish them. So they committed a series of heinous crimes, paying no mind to the consequences. And if there is one thing that the gods cannot bear, it is simple mortals believing themselves to be invincible.